The class of 2026 is shaping up to be a big deal for the University of Houston, but it seems to be missing the biggest of guys.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another crossover edition of Locked On Coogs and Locked On the Portal. We're bringing recruiting expert Brian Smith. Also does some other work across the network for us, but today we're looking at the recruiting expert hat. Brian, I normally open the big weird food question, but right now I'm really concerned about how we don't have those guys that eat all the food with the offensive linemen as Houston looks to build on a 2026 class that's got a lot of talent and a lot of spots, but just doesn't have a whole lot of offensive linemen commit. So over the weekend, for the folks that maybe weren't listening and whatever, or maybe haven't been following along, Pelilete, Primus, a offensive lineman, big road grader type from Midland, Texas, had his final three. Houston was the only Texas school of those three. Other options were Vanderbilt and Washington. And he ultimately chose Vanderbilt, which had a lot of people scratching their heads, to say the least. Brian, I can talk glowingly about the couple of offensive lineman commits they've got, but if I told you a recruiting class had 3 offensive lineman commits, you'd tell me what?
3 is the absolute bottom number that you want to be at in a class traditionally. To put it in perspective, with the 85 number, and I know we're getting ready to go to 105, which that's top end. You'll have a few walk-ons, get scholarships. Most schools will be around 95 they use. Your roster is going to have 15 to 18 guys, ideally, on the offensive line. At 95, it could be 18 to 20 for schools like Texas, Texas A&M, etc. If you're signing 3-man classes, you're in the hole. 4 needs to be the new norm, bare minimum. Now, the good news is there's a lot of time. Texas and some of these other schools aren't in a perfect spot either. It's a long process. We don't get to sign kids till December, but Houston, for instance, if they get 1 or 2 more guys, maybe they get 1 JUCO, maybe they find 1 more kid that develops as a senior, they'll be okay. But they need to get to 4 minimum every year. So if you're not at that point yet, don't hit the DEFCON 1 button, but more maybe at DEFCON 3.
Can you build, and I say this because in the second segment we will talk some about how strong the skill position group is for the class 2026. As someone who's done this for a long time, do you feel like you can actually build a successful class in the long term, or a class that you can call one of the best in school history? Because on average recruit rating, it's going to shape up to be like that. But positionally, there's this glaring hole here, right? Is it possible to actually have one of the best classes in school history without having the big fellas, or enough of the big fellas?
Boy, that's a great question. It's ironic that we're having this discussion, and I mean this literally. I'm in the process of doing my O-line rankings, literally for like classes. I'll just go ahead and throw this out there. Not that it's a surprise. Houston will not make the top 10. So they're just behind in that spot. And what's the spot that is awfully difficult to get out of the portal? Offensive line. That's why I'm doing it. If you miss with the offensive lineman out of high school, you're in a hole that's almost impossible to get out of. You can get linemen out of the portal, but most of them aren't any good, or they got some kind of character flaw. They don't want to work. I mean, I talk to college coaches, 7-on guys, trainers, etc. It's always the same story, whether it's a Dallas kid, whether it's a Fort Lauderdale kid. The ones that are elite, that go to college and bust, it's an effort problem in some way, academically, socially, don't want to work out, whatever. O-line's no different. And those kids don't transfer as much. They'll sit through it.
That's what's interesting to me is why are linemen so much less? This is probably more philosophical. Why don't they transfer as often? Why don't they hit the portal like the other guys do?
This is a really unique deal. I've seen this forever. I've been covering recruiting in some capacity since the mid-90s, and I can tell you the same thing. It's then it is to now. Linemen tend to bond. Let's say Houston in any given year in the last 30 years had a couple of early pledges on the offensive line. Good players, 3-star guy, 5-star guy, doesn't matter what it is. Even the Andre Ware era. Like if you get a couple of those guys, yeah, they want to play with Andre Ware, but they're more concerned about each other. It's a very small niche group. Those guys hang out with each other all weekend. They go to each other's houses on vacation. They work out together. It's worse than like husband and wife stuff. Like they annoy each other, but they never leave each other's sides. It's no other positions like that. I don't care what school you talk to. You could call James Franco at Penn State. You could call anybody on the West Coast. You got Jeff Fish at Washington. It doesn't matter. It's the same stuff. So, but if you don't get a couple of those guys early, it goes in the other direction, snowballs in a bad way. So it's shocking to me with the way that Houston's program is built, because it's got a bit of a military ring to it in terms of who the head coach is and all that. Those guys usually like that stuff. It's usually the skill players that hate it because they're more one-office. No, it's just, look, I'll just say
no, you're right. I'm just laughing because you're right.
It doesn't make any sense. Like Keisean's a little bit different than most kids that are like most guys that are even in the stratosphere of Keisean are a pain in my what to deal with. He's not. So I get it that he liked the idea of Houston. That's fine. But most receivers, running backs, etc., that are highly recruited kids, like a couple of the guys we'll talk about in the next segment, they just had commit. Those guys generally aren't the most fun to deal with when it comes to coaches. It's just true. And the O-linemen are the guys that are like the SIDs at all the programs. If they could, they would have the quarterback and the O-lineman speak and nobody else, because they're going to say what they want them to say. 100%. They never want to see a defensive lineman near the podium. They would ban them.
Yeah,
but
pass rusher. I'm not going to name
they
the
don't.
coach.
They don't want the choppity. Those guys that just shoot at the hip. They hate those guys. But that's half your roster. So it is what it is. But I don't know, man. Like it's been that way forever, and I've never known it any other way at any school. So Houston's got to find a way to get some of those kids up, because you're not going to make a climb even with Keisean if you don't have somebody to block for him.
You're harping on a stereotype I heard a coach say one time about the lower the 40 time, generally the lower the GPA as well. And I don't know that's always the case. He said, the coach I was hearing at one point said it in jest. But I think we're talking about like linemen tend to be guys that have a value for loyalty and sticking with the program and what have you, which honestly makes the Texas Tech case for the Ojo kid committed the other day. I think that's one of the reasons it stuck out so much, right? Is because it did come out of left field. That's very rare for a lineman to do. As we look at the big values before we get into the second segment, it is late July at this point. That's not to say everyone in the world's committed, but a lot of kids are trying to get this done before the year starts. You only got a couple commits, like we said, on the offensive line. How rare is it to flip guys between now and December if you're a school? Houston's obviously like the big blue bloods of the world could throw a bunch of money at a kid and flip him in a little bit different kind of way, but Houston doesn't have quite the same pockets as other places do. Is it possible to be flipping kids with a successful season this fall and maybe pull another kid or two in that you didn't get the first time around?
It is. I mean, this is recruiting. There's a lot of things that happen that aren't necessarily explainable, because we're talking about 17-year-olds. That's first. Secondarily, again, I noted earlier, why can't Houston take one junior college player among the offensive linemen they take? Tyler, JC, something like that. Why not? And if you look at the overarching theme of recruiting linemen, a lot of them, the reason it's so hard, they develop later anyway. There might be a kid that played tight end last year somewhere, Parker, that was 6'5", 255, and his coach says, why don't you try offensive tackle this year? It worked out pretty well for Joe Alt. You know what I mean?
Working pretty well for Joe Alt. There's a guy who in my audience is going to crucify him right now because I can't remember. He was like from Germany. He played tight end, hurt his back, turned into a tackle, became a second-round draft pick, and I can't remember. But he was a Houston Cougar, like the early in like the 2000s. And it's exactly what you're talking about, where it's just like guys just grow into it late sometimes. And again, this is not to say that there's anything wrong with Wolford or Pless or the guys that they did pull in this class. You just want more than a couple guys usually, and Primus felt like one that was going to come and fall in your lap, and he was good too, which helped obviously, but it feels like a big miss in that instance. One thing Houston has not missed on is the skill guys, the skinny guys, and I want to talk about them and kind of how that is shaping the class up in a second. Before we get too far, though, today's show is brought to you. Everybody's over at Game Time. If you ever decided last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family, maybe it's game day, the comedy show just came to town, you decide to go because you heard them on YouTube or whatever. It's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easy way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, invite more people, whatever the case may be. Game Time makes it all possible. Fast, simple. Price they have actually dropped closer to first pitch. Actually got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, lowest price guarantee is great. I like the seat views in certain venues, certain events. Like some shows aren't always made for a big basketball stadium or whatever, so you can kind of see what it's going to look like and where your view of the stage will be. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to Game Time down the Game Time app. Create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Turns apply again. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute is the lowest prices guaranteed. Brian, one thing no one's going to be critical of with Fritz's class of 2026 is the skinny guys. The skill guys have killed it. You mentioned Keisean off the top, and he is a different kid mentally than a lot of kids in that class as far as being locked in, very focused on himself, focused on his own growth. I've mentioned on the show before, he's proven me wrong. When he was a sophomore, like, this kid could grow into a great quarterback. He's a great athlete right now. Now he's an athletic quarterback. Everyone sees him as an athletic quarterback, right? That's a very big consensus thing that he shifted. He also brings in Paris Melvin, who I have described as a joystick, and Jayden Warren, who has could be in the Olympic type track speed, right? And so I'll put the ball in your court. Which of those guys shine? I mean, obviously Keisean, I guess, as a quarterback is most important because quarterback is the most important, but Jayden, Paris, who jumps off the page to you more?
It depends on what you want to do with your offense. Early on, like, Melvin's a more likely guy to play because you can hand him the football. It's not rocket science. Receiver is more about warning routes and understanding the chemistry with the guy throwing you the football. It's a million times harder, except for go routes, stop and go, hitch, slant. Like, how does he run the route tree? How does he handle, bump coverage? And then the next time it's bump and then they drop off. Like, reading post-snap read, like, receiver is a lot harder than running back. So the easy one's Melvin. But long-term, Jayden, like, that's 10-1-8 speed. If you can harness it at all, it doesn't mean he'll play like he's 10-1-8 because you got to think when you're a receiver. If he can get away from thinking and understand the concepts in the zone defenses and all that, in addition to going, I doubt he sees a lot of man unless he's over the top because he's too fast. But that's a difficult position to be put in because everyone's, he's 10-1-8. It's going to be easy. That's not how it works at all. So there are other guys that ran like that caught 3 passes in college. They don't know what they're doing. This kid, though, has got some talent as a receiver naturally, and then the speed is insane. If he takes to the coaching at all, long-term, he has the highest ceiling of anybody, including Keisean, because 10-1-8 is still 10-1-8. It's insane. That's one of the fastest kids in the history of high school football that's over 6 foot tall.
So for the reference to the folks at home, when we say he runs a 10-1-8 100-meter dash, I'm not joking when I say there will legitimately be people that run in the 2028 Olympics that did not hit 10-1 in high school. Like that is that kind of track speed. And he also, as you mentioned, is almost 6'2". Some places I'm 6'2", some places I'm 6'1.5", listed at 195 pounds. He's not like a skinny track guy. Like, this is a big, strong receiver built kind of guy. Parents, though, we're talking about an offense. Each way to give him the ball is hand the ball. I agree with you there. I don't really know what position to call him, but I think it's interesting. We both lean to him playing offense. Do you think there's any shot he plays corner?
No.
In a word, no.
Not when you can use him in combination with Keisean as a RPO package. You can almost tell them it's coming on the 3-yard line, 1st and goal. If you run it 4 times, I mean, one of them is probably going to score. It's hard to take it's hard in today's era with the way officiating is and everything else, the way the passing game works. It's really difficult to take the ball out of a playmaker's hand. And like Texas there's a kid from the Houston area. Texas has committed. He's like 155 pounds. Nobody can really tackle him. He's a good corner. And I'm like, he's 155 pounds. It's probably, you want to minimize hits. play that kid on offense. Melvin's pretty strong.
Yeah.
Like he might be a better player than everybody's right. I forget that kid's name. It's going to tell. I'm like, this kid's bigger, same kind of deal. There's no way in the world I'm not putting him in a position to return punts, return kickoffs, and go to get him the ball. Like,
not to give spoilers to listeners at home about future editions of Locked On Cougs. Is it possible he does some Travis Hunter kind of stuff where he plays a little bit on both and does he is such a good athlete. Like I really think mentally he can pick it up. He's super locked in when you hear him talk. Like I wonder if he could do a little bit of everything. Is that crazy to think in 2025?
The only problem with that is the same with any other guy, and that's playbook. I just know how college coaches work, and coaches in general. They're probably the most stubborn people on earth. They want their guy in their room at all times. Like coaches literally get in like fist fights, arguments, all that stuff. Like that stuff happens. It's real. Now you won't ever hear about it, but like arguing about recruits, who's going to play for which side of the ball and all that, you're not getting my guy. But like, so that's the problem. But physically, yeah. Could you play him at nickel or something? Sure. But then he's like, you got to learn all the coverages. The key word here, college coaches don't like 98%. They want 110. They're not realistic. You're going to have to give him packages. Most guys don't like to do that. But they're at like, I'll just use an example. Lloyd Carr, remember Charles Woodson at Michigan?
Yeah.
They didn't play him a ton because he was unbelievable at corner, obviously.
Right.
But when he came out there on the field, they ran about 5 different plays with him. He was just better than everybody, so it didn't matter. Don't make it hard. Go deep, run a hitch, run it in. We're good. And he ended up winning the Heisman that year. Peyton Manning's still mad about that, but still. That's, why not? Because like if he runs the ball 15 times a game and you play him a little bit on defense, that's fine. Even if it's just specialty situations into the half, et cetera, there's got to be a way to get him the ball multiple ways. Sure.
Well, and I wonder if at that point you're thinking like, okay, hey, we're just going to put you out there to play man nickel in like 3rd and 15, crazy into half, like what, like things that are not complicated to do. He's an athlete. He can do it athletically. It's about time on task at practice and getting reps. And like you're talking about, I love everything I've heard out of Paris's mouth though, since before he committed, but now that he is committed, about like he got to Size Springs. People think of other aspects of that suburb of Cypress and like the different high school programs there, and Springs wasn't quite the program before he got there, and they've kind of put themselves on the map a little bit. Cy Falls, a little bit bigger program, all that kind of, right? And it sounds like that these guys want to do the same thing for Houston. You have, again, you've been to different quarterback things and events that Keisean was at. Keisean was at the commitment for both Paris and Jayden, their own separate days, so it made it a little bit easier. What does it speak to you when, you've again like followed Keisean for a while, that he was that involved with both of these guys? And then they ended up coming. I've joked that he's the best recruiter on staff for Houston right now, right? 2 4-star athlete receiver type. That's a big deal.
Well, he's an elite prospect by any measurement. The vast majority of people that I know in the industry think that Keisean's one of the top 10 to 20 players in the country. I think he's top 5. It matters when that kind of kid calls you. He has cachet. He's a nice guy to talk to. I've talked to him several times. He's easy to be around. So I think it helps. A lot of it's just osmosis because he's a quarterback. He committed early. I don't know if he was the first commitment in Houston's class, but he was certainly one of. And like he jumped in when he didn't have to. He could have called Texas or Texas A&M and said, I'm coming to play wide receiver, and they'd have jumped for joy, or any other school for that matter. Like, I still think he's a positionless guy. Like you could play him at 5 spots. No, free safety, sure. Receiver, sure. You want to play him at nickel, whatever. It doesn't matter. All these people know it. So they're like, man, this guy wants me to come play with him. That matters. So I highly doubt Willie Fritz is the kind of guy that is super tech savvy and understands all the lingo. So having somebody like Keisean Henderson's probably pretty helpful to him. Just being honest, like 7-year-old guys are not going to relate to today's teen. They're not. No chance in the world. So they need their staff and some of the recruits to help bridge that gap because he is who he is. He's not going to really hide from it, and that's fine. but there's other ways to recruit other than just basic phone calls, texts, and sending kids stuff in the mail. This is one of them. You get a kid early that's a stud from the local area that you're recruiting, it's going to help.
Well, and it's as you mentioned, like he is so much about like the city of Houston on my back, the university on my chest. Like, let's go with this. Like he's very much in that mindset of let's put this place on the map. And it obviously the Bishop connection for the folks that may be listening that hadn't heard before. His coaches, Michael Bishop. Well, Michael Bishop, famously of Kansas State, played for Willie Fritz in junior college, actually, many years ago, right? So that connection is a big deal as well. There, he has some trust there from early days. We're going a little long this segment, but I want to clarify. I think we're both in agreement that Davian Gross is a receiver, running back, combo athlete type out of Frisco, Texas. He's also been in the mix for Houston. He's gone out of his way to say that Houston is in his top 5 and corrected like different rivals' Twitter accounts and stuff like that when it's come up. But no, Houston's in the top 5. I promise. But with commitments out of Paris, a very similar kind of athlete as far as what you'd use him like. Does that make you feel kind of like Gross may end up as a Sooner, or is it impossible to think you get both of those guys?
It's always possible, but he'd have to want to come to Houston for far less money. Houston has Jordan money. No, I'm just being blunt. They have Jordan money.
Oklahoma, yeah.
They're Jordan brand, and they have big money boosters. That's rough. That's why I always say relationships matter most. The NIL gets you over the finish line when it's really close. Everybody think, oh, he just took the check. He's just going to go to that school. That's not how it works. Kids all the time turn down more money to go to a different school because they don't have the same relationship. They don't like the school, whatever. NIL differentiates at the end. And a lot of schools really don't even talk NIL until the kids take OVs. It's different than what a lot of people in the public think. But anyway, Gross is elite, man. I don't care what spot you want. He's kind of like Melvin, like you said. I don't care where you want to play him at. Put him in free safety? Sure, we'll take him. He could play 5 spots at Texas. He's one of those guys. Like, you go throw on his huddle film, it's legit. Texas and all these other schools recruiting too. But Oklahoma, that's an easier sell, especially he's 3 hours from OU. It's probably 3.5 to 4 to Houston anyway. I don't know what it is, maybe 5.
Especially Frisco's a northern suburb. Folks that maybe don't know geography of Texas, he's much closer to Norman than he is to Houston.
Because he doesn't have anything in between. There's this open highway.
You get 80 out there. Anyway, all right. I do want to ask you a big question that's kind of been circling the Big 12. And I really want to ask for some explanation because I'm sure there is a logical explanation. And I want to hear from someone who's been on the inside about recruit rankings changing this time of year. Before we get too far, though, I do want to remind folks that today's show is brought to you also by Monarch Money. If you ever wish you're managing money, like all that NIL money we just talked about was easier, Monarch Money can make it easier. Whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having a personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing money, you can also start building some wealth. Listen, I teach, I coach, I podcast. Brian's got a bunch of gigs himself too. All that money comes into one spot. You see it all in one very easy to use dashboard. You realize, oh, like I eat too much takeout. I can go in and addressing those kinds of habits once very in your face. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first full year. Brian, I want to ask this in a way that is, I hope doesn't come off as accusatory, because I know you spend a lot of time working for a bunch of different recruiting outlets, right? A lot of Big 12 folks have noticed that athletes in the Big 12 are seeing a hit or a dip or some sort of a degradation of their ranking as a recruit on a, it's this guy at 24, I guess no longer 20. It's no longer Scout, so I use them as the name because Scout doesn't exist anymore. This guy at Scout seems to have it out for the Big 12 because he's dinking every recruit when they commit. And I don't think it's that malicious, but I do think there's a weird trend here. And I want to ask you, as someone who's done recruit rankings professionally for a long time, you mentioned you're doing offensive lineman, right?
Get ready to, yeah.
What's happening when that happens in July? Because these guys aren't playing games. There's not new tape necessarily.
Well, actually, there is, and it's the more important kind of tape. It's 7-on-7 and camps. June is OT7 finals, for those you don't know, like 7-on-7, it's the holy grail. This year it was in South Florida, and everybody and their brother went down for 3-4 days. And that's one of them. For the guys that didn't go, I was at a different event. I was at Future 50 with the kids that are underclassmen. Same thing, but it was at IMG. They just happened to overlap. But like, you see kids live, and the kids that want to compete, the kids that are elite players that go out there and ball, their ranking went up. I was actually listening to what it's called the 105. Andrew Ivins from 24/7, he does the rankings. I know Andrew well. He was talking about some of the guys, and he talked about Keisean recently, about how good he was at one of the. And one of the reasons he moved him up was he saw him at the same event that I saw Keisean at, that I've talked about, Battle Miami. It's in January every year. We all go to it. There's a handful of events like that. That's the beginning of the cycle, and then OT7's the end. If you do well with those, your ranking's going to go up. And here's what happens when somebody goes up. Somebody else got to go down. It just is what it is. Now, there aren't necessarily a ton of Texas teams that end up at that event. There are some Texas players. There's some of the national teams that get players from Texas, and I think that's part of it. But there are more teams like from the Southeast, the true Southeast, that are at that tournament, a few Cali teams, etc. So it's kind of random. That's part of it. But overall, let me give you an example. Every fan base that I know thinks that the national media hates them in recruiting rankings.
Always.
Every single one of them.
All of them.
Ohio State, Notre Dame, Florida State, Miami. Like, Andrew can't be around Miami fans. They might mob him. So and they have top 10 classes every year. It's ridiculous. So note to Big 12 fans, let it ride. Okay. It's just part of the process. You're going to have guys go up. You're going to have guys that go down. We have a whole season to go through, and Andrew watches about as much film as anybody, but whether you're him, John Garcia Jr., the guys from On3/Rivals that now we're doing the rankings, the Rivals rankings are actually the On3 people. They moved that stuff all around. There's always somebody watching film, but eye test in person will get higher rankings than anything else. That's just kind of the nature of it.
And I can't keep track of the On3 Rivals, who's doing what with them. That is a combination for the folks that maybe didn't know that at home. They've now merged. What about like a lineman? Are linemen doing the same kind of things? How do linemen manage to have such dramatic movement in June and July? We open talking about Houston didn't have enough, so but what's the process there?
It's the same kind of deal. The new trend, and thank the Lord for this, there are 5-on-5 big man camps, and this is how it works. We have 5 guys on an offensive line, just like in a real game. Well, we line up 5 linemen, we line up 5 defensive linemen, and then they do one-on-one reps. You get 2 reps against the guy. We film it. I put them out, etc. I did a rep from the Rivals 5-star from Deuce Gerald's kid from the Atlanta area. It's pushing towards 2 million views now. There aren't enough one-on-one reps good on good with linemen. So these camps have started. Rivals 5-star, the Under Armour camps. That's why we all go. When the linemen go, the rest of the kids, if they want media coverage, they might as well go take a seat, because we never see big linemen go against each other that are quality players. So everybody's down at one end watching the one-on-ones. I don't care if I'm in Atlanta, Miami, New Orleans, wherever, it doesn't matter. We're down at that end. That's how you get it. Because I tell the kids this all the time, off the record conversations with good linemen, they're not getting a whole lot better playing high school football beyond just the reps, because the kid in front of them, they beat the bejesus out of. They weigh 70 pounds less, maybe more. We have to see them at camps. It's why lineman projections are by far the most difficult, because we don't get enough good on good. These camps are about all we have.
Well, and
it is what it is.
So there is some randomness, and like the fact that these camps tend to happen in the Southeast. It sounds like there is some like zero-sum game. If one guy's going to jump up 5 spots, I mean, if those 5 people are going to move somewhere, right?
Exactly.
It sounds like, though, we've got a great, and I'll wrap up here, Brian. If the crux of this is because these camps happen in the Southeast and Florida and Georgia, let's go open one up in West Texas and have everyone meet us over there, and we'll slap it, locked on sponsorship. Boom, we got it done. Let's do this thing. Let's make some money, Brian.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, that's probably something that's going to happen in some capacity. There's some talk, and trust me, those are the biggest things because there's so many linemen. Think about your roster. How many O and D linemen do you have? I mean, Houston's probably got roughly 25 to 30 guys on an 85-man roster that put their hand in the dirt before the whistle. So it's important, and it's something that these college coaches want. 5-on-5 camps, there's a couple of different guys in Texas getting involved, et cetera. In Texas is the holy grail of 7-on-7, but the Southeast is the king of the 5-on-5. It's ironic. California Power is by far the most dominant. One of my good friends who lives in Tampa now kind of runs the O-line, D-line, and they just stomp everybody. He gets kids from LA to New Jersey to come play on his team, and they kill everybody. They got a big sponsor. But there's a lot of these camps starting, a lot of these teams starting. If you got a young guy that can play, he needs to play 5-on-5 if he wants to get recognized and maximize his opportunities. You get to travel, you get to go on college visits. And Texas is probably a spot that I imagine with all the money there, you're going to see it really blossom over the next few years.
That's Brian Smith. There's a lot of work with this at Locked On. We're talking today about recruiting, but you also do Seminole stuff. You do national football stuff. You follow him at FB Scout_Florida on X to see all that come out in one spot. Brian, thank you for joining us again today.
Appreciate it.